What's up, everybody? We're live. Last one for the day. My name is Emil Werstler. Here we are once again for the third session of the day and the final session of the day. And hopefully you can get something out of this this next session we're about to talk about. And it's kind of along the same lines. It's about building off of things that we're already sort of loosely talking about and hinting at and things of the sort. So let's kind of go ahead and dive in and sort of see what's what. And I could just see like all my students that I've had over the years kind of rolling their eyes and being like, man, he's going to talk about triads again. I am going to talk about triads again. However, I want to kind of create like a real world situation to show you guys the basics, but at the same time, show you how you can actually use it to get a cool result. You know, a lot of times, like, let's talk about my learning experience. Growing up, I had a lot of, I was self-taught until I went to college, but once I got to college, I had a lot of people, a lot of teachers that, not all of them, but a couple of them probably shouldn't have been teaching. And they passed on the information in the book, and that I could have just as easily learned on my own, but, you know, it is college, and and so for every like 5 instructors, 6 instructors you have, 1 or 2 of them are pretty much have no business teaching. And I don't mean that by ability, I mean that by influence. And what I mean is sometimes it's hard to, as a teacher, let's look at it from a student's perspective. Sometimes it's hard for a student to understand how useful something is when the teacher can't really give them an example in the real world. Like, it's kind of like learning from a 60 or 70-year-old guy. Not to bash 60 or 70-year-old guys, as I have a lot of forward-thinking friends that are like knocking on 70 that are that I call for advice all the time, and they're actually pretty hip with even technology and stuff. They know more like key commands than I do. But anyways, when you learn, you could just learn something out of a book, and you may or may not be able to do something with it. But if somebody shows you something and they show you how you can build something cool in a real world situation, something that applies to our goals, all of a sudden you become empowered by inspiration. When you become empowered by inspiration, it's not even work. It's almost like a voice just leading you to victory, really. Your obsession is rewarded by basically, you know, in a sense, it's timeless. You're plowing through the task at hand, and you don't feel like you're working at all. You're just doing it. So it does take initial work, and it takes initial understanding of the fundamentals, which is why we're talking about all this kind of stuff. So what I want to do is I want to show you something that had a profound impact on me with my writing, being most of my catalog, if you look me up, is heavy metal based, obviously, even though that's not primarily what I do these days. But there are a lot of riffs that I've written myself, and there's a lot of riffs that I've collaborated with other people on to spice up something that may work that's very basic. Hey, this works, but it's very basic. Emil, what would you do with this? Can we spice it up and make it have a bit of a different tonality? So on and so forth. So the first thing I want to do is I want to jump into major and minor triads. And again, I know you probably think you know this. You probably do know this, but do it anyways. And your goal should not be to tolerate playing something you already know. Your goal should be, how can I see something in this that I have not seen before? Just like your favorite record. You come back 4 years later and you're like, man, I never heard that. You know? That's what that is. You know what I mean? So I like to categorize the triads by sets of string. It's the way that a gentleman named Trey Wright kind of introduced this to me, where you look at it like EAD, you know, A, D, G, D, G, B, and then, of course, G, B, E. And we're not going to focus on all sets of strings, but the first starting point, obviously, is going to be, for rock and rollers, it tends to be the weakest because of the B string. So the GBE strings, from all my students that I teach, the guys that play rock and roll, they can kill the EAD strings, but you know, because they spend all their time riffing on those strings. But as soon as you get them to that GBE string, it gets kind of hairy, right? So here are the minor triads on strings G, B, and E, okay? And this is going to be an A minor triad. So if you ever get lost, just remember the answer is usually in the chord. So let's start here. There's A minor. So right here, with the root note on the E, the root note, you have to pay attention to the root note. That's going to keep you on track. There is A. Okay. The first inversion, notice how we have the root right here. The next inversion up, the root becomes on the B string. The root appears here. So you have it there. Okay. The next example, the root, take a wild guess, the G string. The root happens on the G string. Okay, so to make this kind of more thorough and to get this under our fingers, obviously you can play that same triad down here. Notice how it forms an arpeggio. That's what's happening on every interval inside the triad. So once again, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that is a basic idea of your triads. There's only 3 shapes, you know. A lot of people say, yeah, I think I know my triads, but I just don't really, it's hard for me to learn this stuff. It's like, well, you've only got 3 of them, really, and then they repeat. Okay, so now, since we have the A minor, let's go for the C major triads. And that's going to be, you know what, I think I might have, example 1, I might have jumped an example.
Yeah.
I did. I started on 2, so this is number 1. We were supposed to start in C. Ding, ding, ding. Genius here. Okay, so the C major triads are as follows. Once again, it's inside the chord if you ever get confused. Okay, so inside of that chord, we have this guy here. The root note, once again, pay close attention to the root note. The root note's on the G string. Okay? Now, when I go up and I go to the next one, we have this familiar shape here, where the root note is on the E string. It is part of this chord. Always know what chord the triads are a part of, and you'll never get lost. It's already in there. Okay, so finally we have this kind of D major shape. What I mean is bar form sort of thing. It's not D major. You're doing it off of 12, 13, 12 here, but the B string bears the root note. Okay, we can keep going if we want. Just repeats at this point. So once again, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, those are your basic C major triads. Okay, a quick note, using putting our theory cap on, C major is the relative major of A minor, which is the relative minor of C major. So essentially, you can pretty much come up with options. If you're ever looking for material in the key of C or A, you can play both C and A, C major and A minor. Right? And then, of course, we have... It's pretty close together, but you can build a lot of cool stuff out of that. That's something I do often. Here's C, and finally... So those are really good options for you, just if you're building creative ideas, right? And once again, referring back to progressions, when you have your major triads on these strings and your minor triads on these strings, you can play any progression that is a progression, because major works over dominant, minor works over minor, major works over major, major also works over dominant. Those are your 3 chord families. So if you learn your accidentals, then you kind of you learn where the root notes are at. If I have a 1, 4, 5 like we talked about earlier, I can simply do a 1, 4, 5. If I want something in a higher register than this, 1, 2, 3, 4. I can simply... Okay, so that's just basically, that shows how you can essentially take a progression and come up with an idea that's a higher register. Triads are really cool because you can solo with them. They're sort of more of a storytelling kind of narrative, sort of a lead thing anyways. Kind of like a Johnny B. Good, all that kind of playing right there. So that's the advantage of knowing on the G, B, and E strings. Once again, always know where your root's at. Know which one comes next. So if I'm playing A minor here and the root's on the E, then I know that when I play A minor here, the root's going to be on the B. And when I play A minor here, the root's going to be on the G. This is how guys stay in key and stay on track. This is how people sound thorough, is they're not just guessing, oh, this comes next, this comes next. This is essentially an order of operation. So if you're ascending up an idea, you've got that command. Okay, so let's move on to the next batch. And here we're going to have A minor triads on strings E, A, D. This is going to be really good for your rock playing, especially if you want to do like whether it's a high gain, heavy metal riff, or if you want to do something like a broken up sort of bluesy kind of sound. To me, like when I hear stuff like this, I think like Jeff Buckley, like, you know, I just that full kind of coil tap sound. So we're starting, this is the A minor triad, so we're starting right here on E, A, D. Your root note is going to be on the E string. You have that. Your next one is going to be up, and it starts on the 8th fret. So 8, 7, 7. But as you notice, the root note is now on the D string. Okay. Now we're going up here to the next one, and the root note. That's a good sounding one. The root note is on the 12th fret. Okay. So there are the minor triads. Let's go ahead and fast forward to the major triads. Let me not get mixed up here. Did I just jump ahead on that one too?
Yeah.
Jeez. Okay, so what I have is out of order, and sorry everybody. Refer back to the posted PDFs there, transcriptions of the guitar profiles or whatnot, because what I'm working off of is a little bit mixed up, and I keep clicking the wrong thing. Kind of my style today, I guess, for this last segment here. At any rate, C major triads on strings E, A, and D. So right here, obviously, the root note's going to be on the A string. We have this. You know how full that is? Okay. Now next, the root note's going to fall on the E string. Okay. Now after that, the root note's going to fall on the D string. So once again, we have an arpeggio. Okay, so a quick pit stop to not get too far off topic. I mean, that sound right there, when I hear this sound, aside from the tone that's not very metallic sounding, that sounds like old Metallica. That sounds like In Flames. It sounds like At the Gates. That kind of sound, it's a very full sound. So in a sense, you can take a lot of things like, and this is what we're going to ultimately do at the end of the session here for the last two examples. We're taking regular power chords, something like this. Something that simple, or just like that. We can take those ideas and we have more options. We don't have to be stuck just playing the root and the fifth. This also, it's not as intrusive as adding crazy extensions to an idea. You are adding essentially the third back in at the appropriate time. So what I'm really saying is when you learn something that is bar chords or power chords, you're eliminating the third and the seventh to become just a root and a fifth. So you can kind of get away with not knowing what's major and not knowing what is minor. And although it does work in the name of rock and roll, I think long term, if you want to even be a great hobbyist or professional musician one day, it's going to hold you back. And so what I like to do is mix things up and make them sound different, right? So if I have a C right here, I can do it down here. Listen how full this is. So if I have C to G, how about C to G? I mean, that's a whole different sound right there. If I want to kind of come up with a bit of a different approach altogether, and we'll get into this later as well, I can also arpeggiate the same idea. You know. So there's not just guessing when a person writes a song. You know, you don't have to just guess anymore. If you learn these things and go through a little bit of pain learning them, the chords, where the root notes fall, the 3 chord families, all these small things I'm mentioning, you're essentially going to be able to stop guessing. And I don't know about you guys, but I got really tired of guessing. And I was guessing up into my 20s, and I got sick of it. And I decided that I would rather throw away everything I have and start completely over, which when people say that, it's kind of doesn't mean anything actually, but I would rather sacrifice everything that I had at that point than not go on any further. You know, I don't want to go on any further with not knowing what I'm doing. A lot of people will try to convince you that, you know, it's funny, people use the word soul to kind of talk down somebody who knows what they're doing. Granted, a lot of people know what they're doing in music, and when they're technically minded, or not even technically minded, but when they have technical abilities and gifts that they work on very hard, it's very easy for an old clunker that likes blues music or something, or an old cat that's not really so much into you know, that fast racket you kids listen to. You know, a lot of those people will kind of try to down knowing what you're doing by saying, yeah, but it's not very soulful, you know. But believe it or not, Stevie Ray Vaughan knew what he was doing. You know, Jimi Hendrix knew what he was doing. I assure you, Jimi Hendrix knew what he was doing. So with that being said, we want to know where the root notes are. We want to have a vantage point. We want to be able to climb the mountain and actually have a place to put our foot so we can grab the next place with our hand and pull ourselves up. And that's what this is pretty much doing. So what we're going to do is move on to the next couple of examples, which is going to be on the A, D, and G string. And then we're actually going to play a couple of riffs. And I want to transform those riffs into a different sound altogether. We're going to start out with power chords, just a root and a fifth. We're going to add the thirds back in, you know, within the key, and then we're going to turn it into something hopefully bigger and cooler and more interesting than just the regular kind of root and fifth. Okay, let me make sure I click on the right one this time. C major triad, strings ADG, example 5. Looks like I got it. Okay, so these are very similar to the strings a set below, and you have, that's 3-2-0. The root note's on obviously the 3rd fret on the A string, and then finally we have, let's see, 7-5-5 here. Okay, so the root note's gonna be in the G string there, and then we have the root note's on the D string. Let's go ahead and just knock out minor real quick. Okay, so minor ideas here. All right, so we have this. A minor. So obviously the root note is right here. All right, then we have the next inversion. Right here. Inversion there, where the root note is obviously right there. Okay, so that's essentially, aside from, I like saying essentially a lot today. It makes me sound really important. Aside from D, G, and B, essentially, we've gotten everything. Okay, so once again, you can play major over dominant. So if you see a dominant chord, you can play major. Now, let's move on to the last two kind of master examples, and I even want to take it further than that and just start running amok with this whole idea. Okay, so lesson 3, example 7. Okay, so you may recognize this little riff here. So I could take that and just play it with full chords. But when you're introducing the unwound strings into the equation, you're getting a different sound. This could be a different genre. This could be like a Neil Young song. This could be just like, you know, typical kind of strummy rock and roll where you're playing more chords than anything. But what if you want something a bit more robust, a bit more solid, something you can palm mute, maybe something you can arpeggiate, and utilize some of the techniques from the very first lesson today? And I decided to kind of take a look at this riff, and the first thing I had to do was find out what chords were what. It turns out that I just kind of gave you the answer to that, but the first chord here is A minor. Then we have C major. Play it like this. D minor. And then finally we have F major. However you want to play that, really. Or, you know, you can play it down here if you want. So now I kind of know what I have to build. I know that I need A minor, I need C major triad, I need a D minor triad, and then finally I need an F major triad. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plot my moves here, and also kind of choose the sound that I want. And I like the sound from earlier that I said sounded kind of metallic. I like that. Okay, so I dig that. Let's move on to the next chord. The next chord is going to be, it was just a regular C power chord, but I actually want to take that and keep it in this register because I like how full that sounds, especially with a tube amp. How about that? So let's go between one and the other. A minor, C major. Okay, then we're going up here and we have the D minor. Notice how I'm staying within the lane. I'm in the region here. I don't really want to get outside of that. I want robustness. I want a full riff. In my mind, I have like this really full sounding kind of Metallica sounding riff or whatever you want to call it. And I want to kind of keep it that size of a riff. So I'm going to take most inversions. And for those of you metal fans out there, it's a really stylistically cool thing in my mind to, if you have a progression like that, figure those full chords out of the triads, put the thirds back in, and take it down as far to fret 0 as possible, because down here, the guitar sounds heavier. There's a lot of bands out there that play with 6 strings, and most people are like, do you tune down or play with 7 strings? You're like, no, they flip the inversions and play them lower. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you can put a 4th in below something instead of sounding, the sounds much heavier, right? So there's a D minor we're using. And then finally, we are going to use, for F major, this thing right here, basically, which is the triad, but it's got kind of that E bar form. If I bar that, it looks very much like a E, which makes sense because look at F major. It's just part of F major. It's sitting right there. So we will play the regular riff. Here's a rearranged version. Okay, so to me that sounds a lot more interesting than just regular power chords. But not only that, we have to think about contrasting ideas. Most people go, let's find something better. Let's find something better than just use that. How about find something different and then use both of the ideas, the original power chord idea, and then have a part, like let's say this is a chorus, and you have the chorus come in, and it's just regular power chords. But let's say that chorus comes back as a double chorus. Then you can throw those thirds in there, and you play them back to back, and it sounds really cool. You know, the listener doesn't really know what's going on, but this fullness kind of comes in, and so I transfer or transform a lot of real bone basic power chord riffs for like a lot of rock bands that I've been involved in. I use this idea on those with that mentality quite frequently, and it's led to a lot of really cool riffs. And then when you learn these basics, let's say you play in drop D, then takes a little bit of relearning, but you come up with all sorts of tricks there because you have different sorts of access with that drop D string. So one last thing I want to add is that let's say that this is a verse or a chorus riff, and you like it, and one is really plain power chords, and the other one has the thirds added back in and is very robust sounding and big. Why don't we do something that's more arpeggiating? Okay, so something like this. Right? So, right? To me, you can mix things up this way, and it sounds really cool. And also, if you want to move these ideas up, if you want something that goes over that exactly, well, you can simply, let's see, we're going to go A minor. Okay, now applying the same exact idea using whatever open strings are available, because we are most likely, and I use the term most likely, we're able to kind of bounce off of the open strings to create something cool. So if I play something in the key of C, or E minor, or A minor, or whatever, the first place I'm going to look for options is going to be the open strings. So taking the exact same chords, listen to this. It's a whole different world now, guys. Ballad, right? To me, that sounds really cool. Right? So there's even more. If you want to arpeggiate, you can also use the open strings. How about that? I mean, that's another example of how you can bank off of the open strings. You know, in a sense, the guitar is a very imperfect design that harbors creativity, but when it comes to being efficient, it doesn't really add up compared to like a piano. I mean, or a drum kit, in my opinion. You know, if you want to bang on a snare drum, there's your snare drum. If I want like middle C, I've got like 5 middle Cs on here. So which one do I pick and why? So let's move on to the next little example of power chords, bar chord ideas. Okay, so this one is E. So, real standard kind of like rock progression that I love stuff like this. I'm a sucker for it, and they happen all the time. How do we get the most out of these ideas? Well, by making them our own, I feel. And let's do just that with the triads. And we're going to start off here on the 7th fret, and you're going to have this. That's the E, by the way. Remember, the root note's right here. Back to that really cool, full-sounding C major. Okay, and then we have... sorry, totally my bad. G. And then the C. Okay, so all together that's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's got a totally different sound than the original. Okay. So that puts us a little bit over the halfway point here. And, you know, I think it's kind of obvious just how, like I said earlier, there's no right step when it comes to music. I think taking a step in general is more important than taking the right step. There's this terminology called, what's it called? Not a holding pattern, but analysis paralysis. And most people that know me could probably say that I can overthink things sometimes, but I only overthink stuff that I don't know. And I confess, yeah, I do overthink things sometimes, but not music. You know, I overthink. My socks aren't matching. Where's the other sock? You know, I overthink, like, what's the best way to drive here? Like, what should I do first? You know, these are things that, you know, what do I want for dinner? You know, okay, these are just regular decisions that don't really, you know, in the short term they matter, but in the long term it's kind of whatever. But analysis paralysis is basically where you want to be great at something, right? Or let's just say that you want to, let's just go with that. You want to be great at something, but you don't know where to get started. So you get overly concerned about just every single minute detail. And I encounter a lot of this. Actually, a lot of this pops up with the modes. The modes frustrate people. And if I want to clear out a JamPlay room, a Jam Chat Q&A, I can say, today we're going to talk about the modes, and the numbers just drop. And so lots of times I don't talk about the modes for that reason. Plus, I also think that the modes are just kind of, in general, they're kind of confused because the people, once again, back to that 60 or 70-year-old guy thing, most people that teach this material, they can't really show you what to do with it. They can't show you an example of how to really apply it. And they can tell you via textbook, they can repeat exactly what they've read, but modes, it's the same thing as an inversion of a triad. The same way that I'm inverting a triad, the modes, there's 7 inversions, right? Or was it? There's the first inversion, second, up to that many inversions. So that's what the modes are. It's kind of an order of operation. So back to the triads, don't get involved in analysis paralysis. I say if you write something that's cool and there needs to be variation, then try this out. Try it out because you can control it. It's going to take you a long time. It took me a long time at first to kind of be able to just go, play that riff again. Okay, let me figure out what's what. Now I can pretty much just kind of throw it together, and I know my inversions well enough that I can pretty much do it quickly, right then and there. But yeah, analysis paralysis, don't get involved in thinking too much about what's the right or the wrong thing. Think more of, what can I take advantage of that's right in front of me? And again, you can go learn Paganini if you want to. You can go learn whatever crazy jazz tune and transcribe whatever insane Indian sitar solo. But there's a reason why the basics are there, and there's a reason why CEG sells. There's a reason why verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, chorus is a very typical format for a song. You know, your song doesn't have to sound bubblegum, but the foundation can be simple, so you can sort of alter that foundation and build something cooler. If you think that the best players in the world went straight to playing like that, you're out of your mind. It didn't happen like that. They learned, you know, the real simple stuff at the beginning, and that's just all there is to it. Even Alan Holdsworth, he had to at least learn how to tune the guitar first, you know what I mean? And now he's a monster. So there's a little bit of knowledge on the triads, and to kind of clarify, I took boring, same old triads, and I applied them to a power chord progression and put the thirds back in, and what happened is it sounded much more heavy and much more robust, and in my opinion, it sounded much more interesting than just playing the same old Green Day, Nirvana power chords. It's kind of unfair. I think Smoke on the Water's not good. Anyways. So, does anybody have any questions out there in the chat?
So far, sounds like they're just enjoying listening and taking it all in right now.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, so I just blasted through all that material, so I want to keep talking about this and see what else we can come up with. And let's take and do something interesting based in E minor. And this is one that you would think that I'm actually like, well, I ran out of material, so this is the really cool stuff. This is a lesson I teach quite frequently on various formats, I guess you could say. JamPlay, I've done it for Premier Guitar. It's something I've used that's really helped me. But you have to really know what the open strings are. So, you know, if you're in the key of E minor, this is essentially an E minor. So in E minor, this is going to work. And that means if it works in E minor, then any key that E minor is in, it's going to work somehow. It may take some adjusting, but here's the idea. So let's just say that we're going to take the G, B, and E string. Okay. G, B, and E. I'm going to go up here to the first inversion. And now I'm going to play them like this. Sounds pretty cool, right? Okay. Now, that's to show you that it works, but here's what we're actually doing. Watch this. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? It doesn't even have to really be that fast. It can... All right, so that's one idea. Okay? But now we can add even more, thinking of the musical theory side of things, which is I'm thinking E minor. Let's see what, that sounds pretty cool. That's D major. I don't really like. That sounds okay. Let's kind of keep goofing off here and see what we see. Diminished works really well. So if I'm in the key of E minor, G major should work. Yep, G major does work. It's very close, but it does work. So essentially, I can take anything in the key of E minor, and it's going to work in theory. Then you just take it and you would kind of adjust it later on. So one more time on that real quick, and we'll kind of move on and keep goofing off and see what we see. Okay, there's one example. See it nice and slow. What if I wanted to do something like this? And kind of do a lead in. You know, it's ideas like that. You can kind of keep building with them. Here's another one. You know what I'm saying? Something like that. I mean, you can play a progression of that in the key of E minor if you want. Whatever, you know. So that's sort of like a wild card idea. It's a little bit off topic from what we're kind of going for, but I do feel like it's a really cool idea. And the same thing applies if you want to get. Let's take it down to the lower strings and let's do the same kind of thing. E, A, B. Okay, that kind of works. That's a pretty cool one. You're basically doing this. You're playing that first inversion. And then, it doesn't have to all be fast either. I mean, you can easily do this. Sounds like Tool or something. Right? And then, you know, that's essentially it. Then we're here. Those open strings are helping us achieve different things and different sounds. So, you know, how much time do I spend on stuff like this? I mean, it all really depends. Where it comes out is where I've written music and I have a section that's like, let's just say that it goes on for too long and it's kind of monotonous. The first thing I'm going to try to change is the harmony. I'm going to try to not deface the harmony, but do it in a different way, whether it's arpeggiated, whether it's all played together, you know, and then, or you can create a different rhythm out of it. But I mean, the fullness of it is kind of what I go for. In the studio, I've used these methods quite a few times. To be honest with you, triads, when I don't know how to play in a key of something, like if I don't know what key it's in and I have to figure it out, like on a guest solo or I'm improvising or whatever, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to try to make a triad work. Because if you look at your fretboard, and let's say that, for example, you have C major right here. That's C major. I know that this... that's going to be C major. That's connected to it. And then, look, A minor is right here. Almost the same shape. So there it is right there. Okay, so that's C major. Here's C major. I know that is right there. So if I know that this is right there, I know that this is not far behind it. Right? So it's all about a vantage point. Think about it. A vantage point is a foothold. You're hiking up a mountain and you need a foothold. There's some freaks that can just sort of hang from a crack in the wall with their fingernails. I mean, we've all seen those dudes that don't use a rope either, so it's like a big slap in the face. It's like, how are you doing that? Why would you do that? There's some musicians like that just know how to make stuff work, that defy any sort of logic, you know. But I think in this case here, for me, if people ask me like how do I stay in key, they ask me about modes, they ask me about scales. I usually kind of plan. My plan of action usually involves plotting triads, because if I can see the triad and it works and I know it works, that just opens the door up for everything else that is connected to that triad. So what I mean by that is, and this will probably sort of round up, this is going to be kind of a deep one, so get ready. This will kind of round up today's entire session. I'll kind of, do one of these things. When it comes to learning stuff, there's a point where I think maturity on the instrument truly is where I always tell people it's like an encyclopedia where you have like the human skeleton, and then you fold one cellophane page over and there's like the organs, and then you fold another page over, a clear page, and you can see the muscle tissue, and then you fold the other page over and you get the skin, then you fold the other page over, you get the hair. And that's kind of the way. I'm not saying I'm right. And the beautiful thing about music is it's all an opinion anyways, when it comes down to the art form of it. But the battles that I've kind of fought, and what I'm talking about is practicing, I want to be good at this. How do I get good at this? I think the reason why I have a connection with a lot of my students is because I don't really sugarcoat stuff. And I'll be the first to say that, if I show you all your major chords, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that if this is the first time you're playing guitar, the F major and the B major are going to be the hardest ones for you to play out of all the major. And you're going to go, how did you know that? And I'm going to go, that's because it was hard for me too. And I spent my whole life finding out if it was just me or if it was everybody. And guess what? It's everybody. The same disciplines, the same lack of discipline, the same human nature. We're all human. We all want X, Y, Z when we should be concentrating on ABC. But ABC sucks. It's not hip. It's not rewarding. Nobody's impressed by ABC. It's actually pretty funny, the stuff that I've done on record, and I come here and I'm teaching triads. So either I'm insane or I'm trying to let you in on a secret. And the secret is this: pyramids were built by many, many, many stones that form a gigantic thing that we don't even know how it got there. Some people think aliens put them there. That's how big these things are, And think about a house built out of brick, an entire building built out of brick. Think about a ton of brick. It's easier to move a ton of brick a brick at a time. I don't know anybody that can pick up a ton of brick, maybe with a forklift or something, but what if we don't have a forklift? It's all about small pieces of information that build the bigger picture, really. And I confess, I was Mr. Tappy McSweep, Mr. Tappy McSweep all through my youth. I used to just play so fast and accurate just to freak people out. I didn't even care if it had any musical merit. I just used to be able to play with my little Ibanez and my nines and my low action and my Floyd Rose and all the stuff that a young Emil would have done at the age of 15 or 16. I just really wish I didn't have that terrible paint job on that guitar. But, it was a terrible paint job too. Next time you guys are in the jam chat, remind me to dig up the photo. I think I have a photo of it. It's the worst paint finish of all time. I told myself I'd get it refinished, but who actually does that? I didn't. And whenever keyboard players started telling me they liked my guitar because of the paint job, I was like, it's time to get rid of this guitar. I'm just kidding, keyboard players. But anyways, what I'm about to say, going back to the encyclopedia thing, if you see a random chord, you should immediately see the triad that's right smack on top of it, like in it. When I think of an A harmonic minor, I can see the E7 inside of it, which is there. There it is. But also I see the diminished, a half step below that root, which is there as well. And I'm telling you, when I totally got tired of playing Mr. Tappy McSweep and worrying about all that stuff and warming up for 2 or 3 hours and how many fingers can I tap with, I started working backwards. And instead of adding to, I started taking away. And that's when I got better at making music. And, I'm always going to hold myself up to a standard to where I'm not going to be a normal player. If somebody comes to sees me play live where I'm actually performing, they're going to notice that I'm above average in the technical department. That's just how I grew up, being from a small town, being competitive, my favorite player being Sean Lane, and guys like that, real fast guys that are burning, you know what I mean? And but I found a few things on the way, and one of those important things it's a discovery, is that the more notes you play, this is really profound. So hopefully somebody out there gets this like tattooed on their butt or something. Uh, get this tattooed on you somewhere. No, I forgot what I was gonna say. That was too great. That was so profound. I forgot what I was gonna say. Okay, the more notes that you play, the harder it is to control your harmony. The more notes you play, the harder it is to control your harmony. How do I know? I know because I had to completely change my style. I went for like 15 years of working on Daryl Gable's material, Derek Taylor's material, Sean Lane. I could tap, I could slap, I could sweep, I can play with, in any circumstances. I would even just out of sheer ego, I would be able to do it on an acoustic with 13s just to prove people wrong. That's the kind of cat that I was. Small town mentality, you know what I'm saying? But what I've realized and what changed me and made me and put me where I wanted to be was I sacrificed all that stuff. I sacrificed caring about gear, which is funny because, yes, I do have a lot of nice PRS guitars, but these are more like trophies, I sacrifice caring about gear, though. I don't really want to. People are like, "Do you play Axe Effects?" Really, the reason why I don't do the modeling stuff is because if you give me more than one or two knobs, that's where I can't make up my mind. It's like I wouldn't call it like the Netflix syndrome. I think because there's nothing really good on Netflix. I think it's the Nintendo emulator, the NES or the SNES ROM emulator, where you have every single game from your childhood, and you're like, this is great, and then you spend so much time looking for what to play that you just, by the time you're sitting down and playing, you're like over it, and you turn everything off, and you're like, screw this. That's music. If you give yourself too many options, you're probably not going to find the right selection. So a lot of times as human beings, we want to add more. We want X, Y, Z, when really and truly, sometimes we should be comfortable with taking away, and going back to ABC so we can make sense of all this insanity. But please remember this. You don't have to get it tattooed on yourself. I was just kidding. But the more notes you play, the harder it is to control your harmony. For example, when I went to college, everybody was like, the instructors were two things. They were blown away by my skill level, but they were also like terrified because they figured I was going to be a prick. They were like, this guy's going to be hard to teach because he probably thinks he knows everything. But to their surprise, I came to the school to learn jazz because I couldn't do that. I could play that fast, but if you put down a piece of like music in front of me that was like C, E, G, I couldn't play through those chords. I can play in one key. Most of these cats out there right now that are playing at a crazy speed, they're playing in one key. And to my ears, that's not very impressive because the definition of music is tension and release, and they're just playing like within one scale. There it is, more of that. There it is, more of that. Where does it end? That's like a movie with no beginning or ending. It's just this perpetual like. It's like some Adam Sandler movie where he says the unfunny joke like over and over again until the day that you're in the grave, and then you just spent all your time working on the one Adam Sandler joke with no resolution, with no laughing, and nobody laughs. You just stare at you like he's saying that thing over and over again. That's what that kind of playing. They're great. There are people that are great at it, but what I'm saying is that for a person that wants to control their harmony and wants to get to the guts of making music, even if it's like whether it's Pat Metheny or Bob Dylan or Hall & Oates, or I don't even know where these examples are coming from, but they're pretty awesome. Hall & Oates, Wilt Chamberlain, just kidding, he's a basketball player, was a basketball player. I didn't get it until I finally grew up and stopped tapping and slapping and sweeping, and I still tap, slap, and sweep sometimes for the gig, depending on what it is. But to me, people ask me how I sound like Emil and not like everybody else, and that's how I did it. I started taking away and honing in on what I liked. If there was a measure of a solo that I liked, I would find out how to play that measure everywhere instead of learning the whole solo. It made it harder for me in the beginning to focus and become a very thorough player, but once I kind of matured and once I started playing live and realized nobody cares about that kind of playing except for guitar players, and I started playing professionally, and I started playing in front of people that weren't guitar players, and they didn't care if I nailed a lick. What they cared about was the melody on Every Rose Has Its Thorn. I just had a really kind of like a profound realization moment where I was like, I can play everything in the world at breakneck speed, but I'm playing Every Rose Has Its Thorn on a Thursday night in Delville, Alabama. Like, I hope this makes sense to somebody because it makes a lot of sense to me. I'm not saying give up on what you're doing and go play some terrible Poison song. But what I am saying is that, once again, the more notes you play, the more motor skills you use, the more other stuff is ignored. And the more control, when you put all your eggs in that basket, you put all your control into that one area, some other area is going to suffer. I haven't met another guitar player. I haven't met a guitar player that speed scared me as much as their harmony did. The only guitar player that I can think of is Django Reinhardt, Jimmy Rosenberg, Stockolo Rosenberg, Jimmy's uncle, Borelli the Green, and guys like that. Those are the only guys that have terrifying prowess on the guitar, but they can literally play Mary Had a Little Lamb and make you feel like an idiot. Like, that's what I'm talking about. And really, to kind of tie all this stuff in together, we talked a lot about triads. We talked a lot about chords and scales. It is going to be more technical tomorrow and the next day. And there's going to be a lot of cool stuff. In my opinion, it's fundamental stuff, but it's what you build out of the fundamentals. It's the big picture that you build. And that's what really matters. And I have to believe this because it happened to me. I was a youngster with the Ibanez and the low action, and I could tap with all 8 fingers. Whoop-de-doo. What did it get me? Everybody thought I was cool at a party. Who plays guitar at a party anyways? But as soon as I started playing in a terrible cover band, if I played Sweet Child of Mine, they were cheering. If I played an Emil solo, they were already off to the bar ignoring me. Why is that? It's because sometimes it's too much for regular people. And you can reach to that 1 percentile guitar player in the audience. You can reach that far, and you can blow them away. Maybe inspire them to become the next Jason Becker, which is awesome. He's another one, by the way, that had really good. His balance of harmonic content and speed was excellent, you know. But you can do that, but it's going to be hard to be a mature player when you put that many eggs in that one basket. I'm not saying you have to be the jack of all trades and master at none. As a matter of fact, you have to specialize. But what I'm saying is take a slice of the pie and go learn a song that's out of your realm. Take a slice of that pie. Take 10% out of your, let's play with a metronome until the cows come home, and we'll sweep and tap until the sun comes up and down. Like, whatever. Take a slice of that pie for the love of God and for yourself and utilize that slice, that 10%. Let it go and donate that to the cause of being harmonically aware. And you can start by knowing where your root notes are at. You can start by knowing where your root notes are at. And that's your vantage point. And I hope that this stuff made sense. And because it makes sense to me. And I probably sound a little passionate / silly because I'm super passionate about this. But I'm also kind of tired, so that equals silly. So, but regardless, I had a great time. I always do. I do this stuff because I love to do it. I play the guitar, and I tolerate being a musician for a living because I do love it. It's fading fast, but the love is still there, barely. But it's like 30% now. I'm kidding. But I just hope that you guys realize that I didn't come all the way to Colorado and sit next to that really sweaty guy on the airplane to come like make stuff up about triads and convince you that this is important. I promise this is important. Like, what I'm telling you is, believe it or not. I mean, you could. If you go for this stuff and take a slice of that pie like I did and figure out how the guitar really works, you're going to be an awesome player. You know what I mean? You're going to have a career. But remember, like I said, the guy that's going to get the most gigs is the rhythm guitarist, not the lead guitar player. When Shania Twain looks up Emil Werstler, she's going to go, ugh, you know? Celine Dion or Miley Cyrus looks up Emil Werstler for potential guitar player, they're going to go, ugh, you know? But if they see some sort of like, you know, better looking dude that plays just rhythm, they're going to go, yeah. So anyways, specialize, vantage point, learn the foundation, learn the fundamentals. We're going to be doing more of this all weekend. Build a giant pyramid out of 1 billion stones instead of trying to drop an Arby's off on a helicopter. You know what I'm saying? And that'll be it for the day until we have any questions. Do we have any questions over there?
No, I think people are just enjoying hearing you talk.
My rant.
Yeah, it was good. So I think we can wrap up, and we'll see everybody tomorrow morning at 10.
Yep. Tomorrow morning at
10 Mountain Time.
That's 10 Mountain Time, so that is noon Eastern Time. So
That's right.
thank you all very much for tuning in and hanging out. We're only a third of the way done. There's much more to come. Okay.